Are you getting ready to take the Praxis Core Reading Exam? That is test code 57135713. That's a test you need to pass. Good news. My name is Jeff Calareso. I am a former teacher and a test prep expert at study.com. And in this video, we're going to walk through everything you need to know about the Praxis Core Reading Exam. We're going to cover what the test looks like, what's on it, so you are ready for test day. All right, you ready to go? Let's jump in. All right, let's start with the basics. The test is 85 minutes long, and there are 56 multiple choice questions. That means you have about a minute and a half per question to get through those 56 questions. Perfect score on this test is a 200. Don't worry about a perfect score. Look for your passing score in your state. Most states, passing score is about a 156. So how each question is scored varies. They're scored on a scale based on the difficulty of the question. So you don't know exactly the passing score you're going to need as it translates directly on like a per question level. But generally speaking, if you get about 32 of the 56 questions right, you're going to hit that passing score of 156. Let's get into some strategy. First important strategy is that there is no requirement that you go in order through the questions. You can go in any order. You can also skip questions and come back to them later. There's a limited amount of time. Remember, you have 1.5 minutes per question on average. So if you're getting bogged down in a specific question, skip it. Come back later. Important corollary to that, there is no penalty for wrong answers. That gets us to the second tip. It is to your advantage to answer every single question. So don't be afraid to guess. There's no penalty for guessing. The best way to maximize your highest possible score is to put an answer in for every single question on the test. Don't leave any question unanswered. And then one more thing about your score. Remember, this test is pass-fail. All right, so if you get a 159 and you only need a 156, those extra 3 points don't do you any good. So just focus on passing. Don't worry about trying to be perfect on every single question. You don't need that. You don't need a perfect score to pass. So the next thing to think about is where you're going to take your test. So all Praxis tests are computer-based tests. So there's no bubble sheets, no pencils. You're doing it on a computer no matter where you take it. And the great thing about that is if you live in the US or Canada or US territory, you can take it at a testing center or you can take it at home. So think about what you want to do there. We do have a whole video on the pros and cons of testing at home versus at a testing center, so check that out. But really, one of the biggest factors that some people think about is how close am I to a testing center? So check out the ETS website for where the nearest testing center is to you. And then you can also think about when you want to take the test. That may be a factor of if you do it at home or at a center. So if you do a test at home, you generally speaking have a lot more options available, including the days of the week. Sometimes you can take those 7 days a week. Sometimes you can take them at a wider range of hours. If you go to a testing center, many testing centers are only open Monday through Friday, and some of those slots that are available for tests might only be between like 8 and 2, depending on the testing center. So that's something to think about. The other part of this is you can generally schedule your test up to 90 days in advance. So think about that. Test slots do fill up, especially at those testing centers where there's a finite number of seats. So think about when you want to take it, think about where you want to take it, and lock in your test date so that you can work backwards from that test date to adequately prepare as you study. So now we've covered the basics about the logistics of the test. Let's talk about what's actually on the test. So some test specifics about the Praxis Core Reading test. So it's called Core Reading for a reason. Every single question, you're going to have to read a passage and then answer a question about it. And you're going to have to demonstrate that you not only have read the passage, but you understand it, that you can analyze it, and that you can evaluate what you have just read. All of the questions, though, can be answered with information that was in that reading passage. So there's no outside knowledge that is required for any question on this test. So there's a lot of reading on this test, but the good news is most of the reading passages are pretty short. They might be about 100 words on the shorter end, maybe about 200 words on the longer end. So just prepare yourself for that, but know that you're not going to have to read something super, super long. There might also be some questions where you're looking at a passage that includes charts or graphs, or you might have to compare and contrast multiple passages. But that's pretty much it in terms of what you can expect from the reading passages. So the questions on this test are 100% multiple choice. There's only multiple choice questions on the test, but within that multiple choice, there are two different kinds. The first kind are what are called single answer multiple choice questions. You're going to identify these when you look at the answer choices and you see a circle next to each answer choice. Circle means one correct answer. And with these, you're going to be given a question, and then you will see a selection of possible answers, and you want to pick the best one. Just like a lot of multiple choice questions that you might see in other places, there might be more than one answer that is technically or arguably correct. So you're looking for the one that is the best answer. Pick the one that's best. Make sure you read through every single one. You don't pick one of those distractors by accident, and then check that circle and move on to the next one. If you see a square next to each answer choice, then this is your other kind of question. These are called one or more answer multiple choice questions. These are trickier. All right, so let's take a little bit of time and talk about what you're going to see. So here you're going to be asked to select all that apply. And that may be still just one correct answer, but it may be two, it may be three. You just have to go through and evaluate each answer choice and decide that if it is able to answer that question. If so, check off each of those squares that answer the question. And again, make sure you're reading through everything, because if you don't select all the correct answers, you won't get credit for that question. All right, so now we've covered how the questions will be formed on the test. Now let's go into what the content is on the test. And so on the Praxis Core Reading Exam, there are three main types of content to learn. And the first one is called Key Ideas and Details. This one was about 35% of the questions, which is about 20 questions on the test. And here your goal is to summarize the content, identify the main idea or the primary purpose of the passage that you just read, and you might also be asked to identify specific details that support the main idea of the passage. So let's talk through some example questions. So they might be something like, what is the primary purpose of the passage? The passage is focused on blank. The passage states that blank. Be wary as you go through these questions of any answer choice that includes a really strong opinion or emotions, or it kind of veers away from the factual contents of the passage. These are there to trick you. The second category is called craft, structure, and language skills. So like it sounds, this one is going to ask you about things about how the author chose to organize the passage, maybe structural techniques that the author uses, things like cause and effect, compare and contrast, problem and solution. So things within the passage about how it's put together. This one's going to be about 30% of the test, or roughly maybe 16 questions. And one other thing you might be asked to do is identify the tone or the attitude of the author. Or maybe there's specific words in the passage and you're going to be asked why or how did the author use those. So a couple of example questions. Which of the following best describes the organization of the passage? Which statement would the author be most likely to agree with? Which word could be swapped out for uncanny in line 6 and still maintain the meaning of the sentence? So things like that. So the third and final category of questions on the Praxis Core Reading is the integration of knowledge and ideas. So it's really a fancy way of saying what argument is being made and how good is it or how strong is it. So this is going to be about 35% of the test, or about 20 questions. And these, similar to what you've seen before, are going to focus around analyzing and evaluating an author's argument or intent. And but then you might also be asked to compare and contrast between two differing points of view, or how an existing point of view within a passage compares to a new situation. So some examples of this are: what argument is best supported by the passage above? Which added data point, if true, would support the author's argument? Which statement is author 1 most likely to disagree with author 2 on? So things like that. So the first and most important step as you prepare for the Praxis Core Reading Exam is to learn about what the test looks like and what's on it. Good news, you just did that. So check that off your list. The next thing you're going to do is go deeper into the content and figure out what are my strengths and my weaknesses. And the best way to start that is by taking a full-length practice test. Then you can identify where your strengths or weaknesses are, build a study plan around that. On study.com, you can access multiple full-length practice tests, and these will really help you to identify what the best way for you to study is, how to build that personalized study plan. So that first practice test, don't worry about your score. Just go in, take the test. All you're trying to do is figure out from a baseline, what are the areas that you need that most help with? And then again, create that study plan, focus on those areas that you need that help with. Finally, practice, practice, practice. There's really no substitute for working through sample questions that look just like the ones you're going to see when you go in and take the test. Every single practice question that you do is just helping you get a little bit more ready for test day. And you might see a question on test day and think, oh, that looks just like one I did on this practice test or in that practice set of problems on study.com. And so the more practice questions you see, the more confidence you're going to have and the more ready you are on test day. So you can prep for the Praxis Core Reading Exam in a bunch of different ways. I'm going to recommend study.com's Praxis Core Reading Test Prep course. This is a course that's going to cover everything that I just went through, but in a ton more detail. So one of the best things is there are short form videos on every concept on this test. So wherever you need that review, you can watch an engaging video and that's pretty short and learn that concept. And then you get to practice with practice questions. Those practice questions also include explanations. So if you're not sure why the question you answered incorrectly is incorrect, it's going to help you right there. And then the next time you see a question like that, you're going to do that much better. All of that content was written by former teachers and test prep experts, and people who use study.com's test prep courses have a 92% pass rate on their exams. So it's a great resource, highly recommend it. Also, check out more videos in this series. We're going to be posting more Praxis Core reading content, including some question walkthroughs. So take a look at those as those pop in. The best way to keep on top of those is to set that notification bell to get alerted. Also, like this video, subscribe to this channel, keep checking back. And the last thing I'll say is leave us a comment. Let us know if there's something that you need help with, if there is a particular question type or a different test that you'd like us to cover. Last thing to do also, after you pass your test, come back here, leave a comment, let us know how you did. We want to hear about your success. All right, good luck on your test.